All right. All right. So, my name is Jason Martin, and this is my colleague, Mr. Zach, and he just watched my video of me teaching my lesson for last week, and we're gonna go over the questions and have a little discussion based how I did, and we're gonna go over what I can learn from and what I can do going forward. So, Mr. Zach, it says, based on your analysis of student learning evidence, establish what has been learned by whom, what has not been learned by whom, and who needs additional support to meet the standard. What have you learned about our students' learning characteristics that you did not realize previously? So, Mr. Zach, you know my students very well. You've worked with them. So I watched the video, of course, and so I think the two students that definitely were learning the most were Katie and Dylan.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Based off what I was able to hear, they're the ones who are participating the most, and the choral responses where their voices were the ones I heard the most.
Yeah, they are probably the two higher ones out of the 5 students I was teaching. I was surprised by the level of Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely needs a lot of additional support. I feel like he could, benefit from scaffolding techniques.
He's also good. I watched that you had them pair up and share. Johnny's really good with pairing up with a peer, especially one who may be a little more higher in the content area, because Johnny is a student that does work and is willing to work. The engagement needs to be almost constant with him.
I agree, because one of his best qualities is he's very social.
Mm-hmm.
So he does get that motivation from
talking. Yeah, and it's hard when you're teaching a group of students to give one student that engagement all the time. When you pair them up, it helps.
Yes, I agree that he would learn well from a student that that can teach him, and I feel like what I've learned from this class so far is a good way to assess if our students are learning what we're teaching them is, can they teach it to someone else? Mm-hmm. So I try to use that strategy with my kiddos for sure. So I think that would definitely benefit Johnny. And I think, let's see, and then yeah, the biggest thing I was surprised about that I learned was how low Johnny was. Mm-hmm. And I knew that Dylan would be really good, and I knew that Julia would do a good job, and Katie would do a good job, because they do have the ability to read. I think one thing I did realize after when I was starting teaching the standard, because the standard is first, middle, and last of a CVC word, and I thought as I'm teaching this, I was like, this might be a little too hard for them, because I don't know if they understand the actual concept of first, second, and third.
And that's something I know that we were talking about prior when we were looking at the work, that maybe before, I liked how you had the video of explaining what you're going to be talking about, the words. That's helpful, but also it could have been helpful to explain first, second, and third, that concept. And you could, for a student like Johnny, provide them, it doesn't cost any extra. You literally can just draw it on a whiteboard or draw it on a piece of paper, a little sectioned out area of where you'd want them to put the first, second, and third letter. Because it is good to ask them those individual letters, but if they can't identify where first, second, and third are, then adding on another demand, they're going to miss you're not going to be able to get them to comprehend
something like this.
Yeah, so having them first say, okay, where's first, second, and third, or what's first, second, last, if they can't tell you where they can put something. And for Johnny, it would be helpful to have the tangible manipulative paired with the actual letter on the paper instead of having it blank, because then you can teach him by him matching it, and then maybe the next time you do the lesson, don't have the letters there, and see if you can remember just by asking him what's second, what's last, what's first.
Yeah, because we talked about that, and I'll show, like, it's kind of like what you were saying, like, do they know the concept of breaking up, and that's easy to do, and I actually like that a lot, and I was like, I can use that in the future.
And then with the at family too, you can use the AT as one template as well, and create like a little house, like a little family house where they can just move around the letters to show that, oh, if you change the first letter, then that can help them learn the concept of that first spot. Like, oh, the first layer changes and it changes the whole thing.
Because that's also another standard.
Another standard,
yeah,
exactly,
you
yeah.
know, the blending and
And then, of course, you would start with figuring out, but then that's where that whole first, second, and third thing actually
Yeah.
shows that, okay, teaching them that concept is helpful because it is something that will continue on in their learning.
Okay, so the second thing it talks about is how effective was your instructional design based on your planning and teaching as evidenced by the data collected. So I think we kind of talked about it, like as I was teaching, I was thinking, this might be a little over their heads, and my design could have been a little simpler, like breaking it down into steps, kind of like we talked about, scaffolding, and I think that could have definitely helped because I did collect some data, I did some sheets, and it definitely, like, it shows that they don't quite understand
Yeah.
everything. So I think we need to start at a lower,
But the
spot.
one thing I do like, though, that I didn't get to say yet, was not selling the student short. I like how you have it where there is 6 words on here paired with pictures, but then you have it without the pictures. Because sometimes the only reason you know it was a little bit higher or a little bit harder for the students is because you gave them a lot of content, but it's not individually not too hard, because they say if you gave them just 1 or 2 words and they nailed it, you might think, oh, they get this. But you provided them with enough opportunity to show you what they can do, and also enough opportunity where you can correct some errors and give that feedback that's so important.
I tried to
for
make
them.
sure that, like, even in the beginning when I was giving them like a lecture of what we're going to talk about, I even used the words that I knew was on the sheets, like hat, like cat, lip, leg, so they were kind of hearing those and they would get kind of a little more familiar, so they'd have a better chance of displaying understanding and knowledge.
Yeah, so that's good, because then it shows that the feedback that you're giving them is actually in line with what they need, because they're not just given a small amount of opportunities to present their knowledge.
Okay, so next one, it says, moving forward, how will you plan differently based on your knowledge of students' learning characteristics, both previously known and newly discovered? Which additional differentiation strategies and multi-tiered levels of support will you consider? So I think we kind of touched about it. I definitely
Yeah.
think the scaffolding, and I when I made these sheets, I kind of had in mind of what, kind of helping them out. So I tried to like break it up. Where are they? Like, I guess I thought I had, maybe not these ones, but I broke it up into like where it's like I did the slashes to make it so like there's this sound and then there's another sound to try to help, but I think that was still too high for them. I like how we talked about earlier with we breaking it up, like, let's just teach the concept of first, middle, and end.
Yeah.
And I think that moving forward, that's what I would change mostly. I think I would start with just that concept, because I think that's the hardest concept of this lesson.
Yeah, and then I would add having some sort of manipulative, especially for Johnny, who does need that attention. Because one thing too, as we both know, how he works, the distraction level for him is pretty high. So even having that manipulative in front of him, you can see when he's engaging with it appropriately, but it also gives you that extra little tool, not just to teach, but also to see, okay, are they checked out by the way that they're using the manipulative? So I've seen that useful as well when you have using the math blocks, for example. When you're asking them to use the math blocks, some kids who are it's easy to look at the table, see who's checked in, because some of them are using it, some are building buildings.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, they're using it, that's great, they can tangibly touch it, but now I need to correct them with the concept. So it gives you that little extra visual for them and for you.
Because I know with Johnny, like his writing ability is kind of low.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
some of the things, the sheets I gave him involved writing, and so going forward, I would probably
That's a good point,
adjust, like not have him. Because that's why I wrote him. Like, it's okay if you can just tell me. I don't expect you to have to write everything down. If I hear you, or you're pointing to it, you're
That's a
showing me
good
level.
point. So yeah, I guess a third thing would just be if you tell me, write it, or even like with Johnny, you can just have a show me, like if they because I know Riley has verbally saying it would probably be hard for Riley, and
Right.
if he couldn't write, you would have to have a third option for a student like that.
because that, I mean, when it talks about multi-tiered levels of support, that's why I try to use like the like the UDL strategies, like the multiple tiers of representation, expression, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't really care how they express themselves,
Exactly.
because some of them, they can't do certain things. But I thought overall they all did what they were capable of, and I think if I adjust how I teach it, it'll be more successful going forward. Okay, last one. How you modify, extend, or incorporate new levels of presentation, expression, and engagement for your learners. So we kind of talked about that. I think I would maybe instead of showing on my laptop, I would like if they all had like a tablet or an iPad where they can watch the video
I was gonna ask if
by
they have it.
themselves. But when I was setting up, it was kind of like I didn't have time to give them all, and so I was like, hey, I'll just do it that way. But I think that way it would give them more maybe tangible what's in
Yeah,
their hands.
and it gives them. I like that because then it gives again going back to a student like Riley who may be limited in their verbal response and may be limited in their written response. That having the computer as a tool to type would be helpful too.
And all of them are, pretty good on the ability to navigate.
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
So that wouldn't be a problem. I think one thing I would probably change. I know our professor has talked about I asked I asked if we had like popsicle sticks with their name on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And I didn't have time to make those, and that's an easy strategy to where I can just call out your name, and it's like, so you can kind of manipulate
Yeah, I like
who
that.
you want to call out. And our professor talked about it. He's like if a person needs extra help, you can call on that person a couple times.
It doesn't feel like they're singling out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's a good-
and then I think I also, as I was watching it and as I was teaching, I was like, man, I forgot to bring out our dollars to reinforce them while we were doing that. And I was thinking that's bad on me, but I would try to have a little more reinforcing items and value during the lesson. So I think that would motivate them pretty much better. So I think that's it, man.
Yeah.
All right, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for helping me out, and hope everything goes well. And thanks, Dr. Seaver. I appreciate it, and enjoy grading my assignment.